CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from the CGTN in London. I'm Juliet Mann. Our top stories. The first British woman to win a Grand Slam in 44 years. Emma Raducanu takes the tennis world by storm. Europe's biggest oil producer is heading to the polls with climate change front and centre of the campaign. And tides of change, how China's vast offshore wind farms are powering the country towards a lower carbon future. Emma Raducanu has become the first British woman to win a major tennis tournament in 44 years. The 18-year-old beat her teen rival, Leylah Fernandez, 6-4, 6-3 to earn her maiden Grand Slam title at the US Open in New York. Her $2.5 million win also places her at number 23 in the world rankings, and she'll officially become Britain's #1 on Monday. Well, Yolo Abdath at the Park Langley Club in southeast London, where Raducanu trains, and it's nearby to her hometown of Bromley. Good to see you. What's the reaction been like there?
Well, people are overjoyed, as you can imagine. They're still playing tennis in this club where she started playing when she was 6 years of age. And she was here until she was about 11, before then graduating on to another club and more serious tennis. And I think the feeling here is of pride, obviously, a terrific interest in how she conducted herself and won. And I think that this front page on a Sunday supplement here in Britain, Miracle in New York, is especially poignant of the way she's grasped that trophy, especially given because it was that 20th commemoration of 9/11, and she wasn't even born when those terrorist attacks happened in the United States. So I think that a feeling of real pride, and of course, when we arrived here, we were tripping over other camera crews. So such is the interest in Emma Raducanu. A packed bar in the Park Langley Club. This is where Emma Raducanu's tennis tuition began. At 6 years of age, she was already showing promise.
I was confident she would go on to become a very, very good tennis player. And as we know, tennis it's such a tough sport to make it to the very top. But I'm certainly not surprised that she has gone on to do it, because if anyone could have done it the way she's done it, it's Emma Raducanu.
Through the qualifying rounds and right up to the final, Raducanu kept calm and retained her composure, so much so that she didn't even lose a set throughout the competition.
It means everything to me to be here in the main draw, first of all, and then in the final of the Grand Slam in the US Open. I always had dreams of playing in Grand Slams, but I just didn't know when they would come, and to come this early and at this point in my career. I've only really been on tour for a month, 2 months since Wimbledon, so it's pretty crazy to me.
At Park Langley Club, where Raducanu had her first tennis lessons, as well as 6 grass courts, there are clay, tarmac and indoor courts to play on and practice. Her achievement is expected to boost interest in the sport.
Our members are very proud of the success that Emma's achieved, and some of the other players that have come through the club in different sports have achieved. From the youngsters, it's just inspirational.
Raducanu was born in Canada, but schooled in the UK. Both her Romanian and Chinese parents are credited as being hugely influential in her development.
They're my toughest and biggest critics, and to have them, say they're proud and happy, it just means absolutely everything. And yeah, when I was out there, I definitely wanted to do it for them as well as me.
It was a fairy tale final in New York, on the same day that the sorrow of 20 years ago was commemorated. In England and worldwide, many will be toasting Emma Raducanu's success.
Yolo, she'll officially be Britain's #1 female tennis player tomorrow. So what's in store for this 18-year-old?
Yes, and she jumps up from 150 in the rankings. To reach that level, as well as receiving $2.5 million prize money just a few months after her A-levels, is really quite extraordinary. And what we were hearing here, not just from the coach, but also other people who knew her, that she will certainly be inspiring other teenage girls and other young women to keep on playing tennis rather than dropping out, as normally happens, or with many of them, and then maybe they rediscover their tennis when they're in the late 20s. But she will inspire many, many young women and young girls to keep on playing. And this dedication, this focus, this steely attitude that she had, and everybody was referring to it, that bar inside the club was packed last night to watch this final, and that people are in awe, really, that coming from a wild card qualifier in Wimbledon to the fourth round and then not dropping a set through all the qualifying rounds and the competition in Flushing Meadows really shows her ability and her confidence. And people were also saying about her Chinese mother from Shenyang and her father Ian from Bucharest in Romania that they have been very, very careful in how they've made sure that she's academic, she has she's passed A-levels in mathematics and economics, and she's got that. And that's why she wasn't really focusing and competing in tennis at too young an age. And now she seems far more mature because of her ability in terms of education and the way she's transferred that maturity into this competition in the US and winning the Open. And a lot of people were giving her parents a lot of praise too.
You're up, David, and what a tournament, and probably not the last one that she will raise the trophy for. You're up, David, thank you very much. Now, before the pandemic, Emma Raducanu regularly travelled to her mother's home city of Shenyang in northeast China. She saw relatives and practiced her tennis. Now, after her win on Saturday, she thanked her fans in Mandarin, saying she hoped they enjoyed watching her play, and signing off with, "I love you."
大家好，我想说谢谢。我希望你喜欢看我的网球，我现在特别开心。但是我们赢了，姐姐我爱你。
Well, let's get more on Emma Raducanu's win with sports journalist and broadcaster Paul Scott. Good to see you, Scott. Now, this was a sensational victory, wasn't it? When you think she was forced to retire from Wimbledon 2 months ago, she almost came from nowhere, right?
Yeah, former British #1 tennis player Tim Henman described it last night. He was courtside in New York, and he described it as an absolute joke, what we've witnessed over the last 3 weeks. And I don't think there's a better way of putting it. It was so unexpected that Emma Raducanu herself had a flight booked from New York back to the UK 17 days ago, just in case she didn't make it through qualifying. She was meant to be competing this weekend in qualifying for a tournament in Luxembourg. So that's how unexpected this is. You mentioned with Yolo a few moments ago how she was 150 in the world. She had to come through qualifying 3 matches just to be in the first round of the US Open. No one in history has come through qualifying and gone on to win the major in the way that she has done. So that just puts it into context. It's been quite remarkable.
And I'm thinking about that great big check she got as well. So let's talk about brand Emma. She's already made the front cover of Vogue, but what opportunities do you think await her?
I think the world is her oyster. One agent's been quoted over the last 24 hours saying that she, over the next few years, could make upwards of $150 million and possibly more. You mentioned $2.5 million in prize money already. Forbes, they usually do their rich list, and of the top earning female athletes, 9 of them are tennis players. So that gives you an idea of exactly the leagues that Emma Raducanu will now be competing in. Naomi Osaka is #1 as the highest earning female athlete. She made around $37 million just in endorsements in a 12-month period. So that gives you an idea of exactly where Emma Raducanu can be. She already has endorsements with Nike and Wilson, the racket brand Wilson as well. But I think there's going to be a lot more brands knocking at her door and coming her way over the next few weeks and months. But I think it's a bit of a catch-22 for her, because she's got there by being a very good tennis player and winning tennis matches, and she needs to carry on doing that because her career has sort of gone almost in reverse. She started her career by winning a major, which is not how it's meant to be. She's barely been on the tour. She's barely been on the circuit. She only entered her first tour-level tournament back in June. So there's a lot of changes coming her way.
Well, let's talk about not just her changes, but how tennis, the game, is changing. We heard Emma speaking in Mandarin a moment ago, but you know, she and her opponent, they're truly teenage global citizens.
Yes, that's right. And Naomi Osaka as well you would put her in that category, of course, the Japanese and Haitian background that she has, Naomi Osaka. Emma Raducanu, you've mentioned, with Romanian and Chinese parents, born in Canada. Leylah Fernandez as well. Let's not forget Leylah Fernandez in all of this, the opponent that Emma Raducanu defeated on Saturday in New York. She's only barely 6 months older than Emma Raducanu herself. She's only 19, and I think both of them showed a real maturity because it was a really high-quality match as well, let's not forget. A really grueling battle between the two players, and you saw the speeches afterwards. Leylah Fernandez actually taking the microphone after her interview was complete, saying she wanted to say a few more words, and then paying dedication to the US crowd, the New York crowd, of course, as Yolo mentioned, on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. And that shows a real maturity, a real self-awareness that this next generation of tennis players seem to have.
Wise beyond their years. Paul Scott, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much. Let's take a brief look now at some other news from around Europe. Pope Francis arrived in Hungary early Sunday morning. It was a flying visit, with the pontiff spending just 7 hours in the capital Budapest before moving on to Slovakia. He used his visit to warn against what he called the threat of anti-Semitism still lurking in Europe and elsewhere. Britain's health minister has ruled out the introduction of vaccine passports in the UK. That's despite cases rising over the past few months when restrictions were eased. Speaking to the BBC, Sajid David also said he's not expecting any more lockdowns in the country. The mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, has announced that she's running for the French presidency. Hidalgo is a socialist who's run the French capital since 2014. Incumbent President Emmanuel Macron has not yet announced that he'll seek another term, but he is widely expected to do so. Still ahead here on The World Today. Hindus honour the elephant god, but this year's Ganesh Festival has been curtailed by COVID. I wanted to carry on talking to Paul.
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens.
4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
Third wave will probably take longer to emerge. This vaccination centre is part of a massive effort to try and drive down the numbers of the new variant that was first identified in India.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Norway elects a new parliament on Monday and most likely a new prime minister. The campaign has largely focused on the future of the oil industry in Norway, Western Europe's biggest producer. Johannes Pleshberger reports from Oslo.
Crowded campaign booths in Oslo, Conservative Party activists are out in support of current Prime Minister Arne Solberg. Their aim, a third term in office.
We try to have a lot of direct contact with voters, both by a stand, by knocking on doors, by calling people by cell phone, but also sharing messages on social media with the Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister, which is a very popular Prime Minister in Norway.
But the popularity of the governing coalition is fading. Polls predict a victory for the Labour Party and its allies, including the Greens, which means Norway's most important industrial sector could be threatened, according to the Conservatives.
The Social Democratic Party is dependent on the Green Party, which wants to close down the Norwegian oil and gas sector. Very radical policy, and I think that actually will mobilize the Conservative Party.
The debate around abandoning oil production and increasing tax on the rich dominates the election campaign, with coronavirus only playing a minor role. Prime Minister Solberg has been widely praised for her handling of the pandemic, but some say that won't be enough.
One of the major issues is whether Norway should continue looking for oil outside the coast of Norway, or whether we should stop doing that for the sake of the environment. And this has become a big, issue between the political parties, and it remains to be seen what happens after the election. But certainly there's a chance that some of the Green parties, they will not have a majority in Parliament, but they will have some influence over a new government.
More than 50% of Norway's oil is reportedly still in the ground. A left-wing Green coalition could scrap exploration permits in frontier areas, but the Labour Party says a complete shutdown isn't an option.
We don't think the answer for Norway is to unilaterally turn off our oil exploration and industries. We need the competency, the people and the technology in the oil industry to manage the transition towards a green economy.
Norway has a
complex electoral system that favors rural constituencies. It is difficult to predict how many parliamentary seats each of the 9 parties will get.
But it is looking likely that the next government will reduce oil and gas exploration in some way, although the role of the more radical smaller parties and how far those cuts go remains uncertain.
Johannes Blechberger, CGTN, Oslo.
Voting has finished in legislative elections in Macau, China. Now, some polling stations saw voters lining up before polling even began. Preliminary results were expected to come out early Monday morning. 33 seats are in contention, including 14 directly elected seats, 12 indirectly, and 7 others appointed by the Macau's SARS chief executive. Malaysia is rolling out a second Chinese-developed COVID-19 vaccine from CanSino Biologics. It's a single-dose shot that's being targeted at remote and marginalised communities. Ryan Meltzer reports from Kuala Lumpur.
Malaysia's government has ordered 3.5 million doses of the single-dose CanSino vaccine, enough to cover 1/10 of the population. 500,000 doses are arriving from China fully finished, while CanSino's local partner, Solution Biologics, will fill and finish the remaining 3 million doses in Kuala Lumpur. But that should just be a start.
We're just going to go beyond Malaysia, so we are expecting to supply to ASEAN. We are forecasting about at least 30 million doses from ASEAN countries. And just recently, Indonesia approved the emergency use of CanSino vaccine.
As a single-dose vaccine, it has advantages.
We will ship to the states that haven't yet managed to vaccinate 50% of adults. Because it's single dose, we can use it in the hard-to-reach areas, remote places where it's difficult to get people 2 doses.
Vaccination rates are highly uneven across Malaysia, with more than 80% of adults in the Greater Kuala Lumpur area fully vaccinated, but just half that rate in the state of Sabah on Malaysian Borneo.
Solution Biologics says the vaccine is well suited to inoculating the large numbers of undocumented migrants in Sabah and other states. It believes this collaboration with CanSino can help Malaysia boost its capabilities in vaccine production.
I think Sino, if they are happy with us and we build that relationship, we can also open up the ability for the government to collaborate with CanSino and also maybe Beijing Institute of Biotechnology in the future for any other new ventures for vaccine.
As with another local company's deal to fill and finish the Sinovac vaccine here, the CanSino partnership could bring benefits to Malaysian healthcare far beyond the current battle against COVID-19. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
Hindus across the world are celebrating Ganesh, a 10-day festival marking the arrival of the elephant god, Lord Ganesh, on Earth. But across India, much of the usual fanfare is missing as authorities try to keep crowds off the streets due to continued concerns around the pandemic. Radhika Bajaj reports from Mumbai.
After his disappearance last year, the first in nearly 90 years, the Lal Bagh Ka Raja is back. But the most iconic community celebration of Lord Ganesh in Mumbai is minus the usual grandeur. The revered idol, which is usually anywhere between 14 to 18 feet tall, is all of 4 feet this year. And with the ban on physical viewing of this and other community idols, organizers are urging devotees to stay at home.
Millions place their faith in Lal Bagh Ka Raja and believe he grants all their prayers. People used to queue up here for 24 hours to seek blessings. This year, we are requesting devotees to view the idol online. If this year we can come out of the pandemic situation, next year we'll celebrate with a lot of fanfare.
These skinny lanes leading up to the idol typically see 2 million devotees from across India during the 10-day festival. All such entry points are now blocked and police personnel are monitoring day and night. But that, prohibitory orders against public gatherings by the government, or the fear of the coronavirus don't stop devotees from trying their luck.
We have come to seek the Lord's blessings. We are not afraid of coronavirus. He is the one who gives us life and death.
Some people told us that the police may allow us in, but everything is closed off here, and I feel very sad.
Restrictions have also been put on typically large processions to bring home the Ganesh idols, and also their immersion in water bodies. Authorities have mandated that only those who are fully vaccinated participate in these processions.
The Ganesh Festival is a calendar event in Mumbai and it's essential for the cultural fabric of the city for decades now. Leading up to the festival, markets have been jam-packed and social distancing norms entirely forgotten. Officials worry that even though strict restrictions are in place and at the moment the positivity rate hovers around 1%, they could see a spike in the coming weeks.
While the caseload in Mumbai is currently low, past experience of a sudden surge in cases has led to the authorities adopting strict measures, even as they prepare for a third wave that may target children.
We are prepared with more oxygen tanks, bed capacity and ventilators, as well as quarantine centers and hospitals for kids. We have kept everything ready.
While the preparedness may be there and restrictions in place too, public compliance to the guidelines and their enforcement is another matter altogether. No doubt, some fervent prayers this year to the Lord, who removes all obstacles, will be to remove COVID-19 out of our way. Radhika Bajaj, CGTN, Mumbai.
Let's take a brief look at some other news from around the world. The FBI has begun releasing documents related to its investigation of the September the 11th, 2001 attacks. That's in response to an executive order by President Biden. Keen interest is being paid to allegations of Saudi government support for the hijackers. Relatives of victims have been called on Biden to skip memorial events if he did not declassify documents that they claim will show Saudi government involvement in the plot. Afghanistan's acting higher education minister has said gender segregation will be enforced in universities in the country if female students have to be taught by a male teacher. Students will also be required to wear a veil, and the class would be conducted using curtains or a screen. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting Cambodia as part of his 4-day tour of the region. He's expected to meet the Prime Minister and other officials to discuss bilateral cooperation in the fight against COVID-19, as well as other regional issues of common interest. The visit follows a trip to neighbouring Vietnam, where Wang announced that China would donate 3 million vaccine doses to the country. China has pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2060, and a major part of that effort is building more wind farms. Many are being built offshore, and some are vast. Gao Ang reports from one of those off China's east coast.
This is not your regular wind farm. Its construction in the Hangzhou-based estuary has been anything but easy. There are high winds and big waves year-round, and the silt can reach 50 meters below sea level.
It's like inserting a 100-meter steel pipe on a piece of tofu. Construction has been a very big challenge.
Now these wind turbines have been connected to the power grid.
Behind me, each one of these wind turbines can provide electricity for 4,000 to 7,000 households every year.
The wind farm located in Daishan is owned by the China General Nuclear Power Corporation, a state-owned company focusing on renewable energy solutions. China has pledged to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. Energy industry insiders say wind farms play an important part in reaching that goal.
The Daishan wind farm has a total capacity of 234 megawatts. Compared with a coal-powered plant of the same size, we are cutting 170,000 tons of coal and reducing harmful gas and dust by 470,000 tons.
According to the Global Wind Energy Council, in 2020, China led the world in offshore wind installations for the third year in a row. High costs and unstable weather conditions pose challenges to these wind farms. But experts say China's push for wind power proves it's serious about cutting carbon emissions and becoming carbon neutrality within the next 4 decades. Gang, CGTN, Daishan, Zhejiang Province.
A final look at our top story. The first British woman to win a Grand Slam in 44 years. Adukano takes the tennis world by storm.
It only really sunk in when after I won the semi-finals, that I was in the final of a Grand Slam. Like, the occasion, there was no getting around, it's your first Grand Slam final, but it was the same for both of us. So we threw absolutely everything we had at each other, and there was some great tennis being played. She's such a tough opponent, so I had to play my absolute best and dig very deep in the tough moments. But I came through it in the end and extremely happy.
Well, that's it for The World Today. Thanks for watching. We're available on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and on the CGTN app. From all of the team here in London, goodbye.